Hello, I'm Alan West, and welcome to Next Generation Today. I'm joined by my co-host, Michelle Fields, and filling in for John Phillips is the incomparable Tammy Bruce.
That's right.
Got it?
Yeah.
Today is Friday, March the 8th, 2013, which happens to be the 30th anniversary of President Ronald Reagan's Evil Empire speech. We will revisit that historic moment later in the show, and then unfortunately we'll scare you with the shocking statistics and explain why down in my neck of the woods, spring breakers in Florida are probably sunbathing more than they had planned. But first, Rand Paul, the great senator from Kentucky, made headlines this week for his 12-hour and 52-minute filibuster of John Brennan's nomination to the CIA. So what is a noble and principled stand? Or some people are trying to see it as an embarrassment. Take a look at this statement that's provoked a bit of controversy.
Is objecting to your government or objecting to the policy of your government sympathizing with the enemy? Some openly were sympathetic. No one will ever forget Jane Fonda swiveling around in North Vietnamese armored guns, and it was despicable. That's one thing if you want to try her for treason, but are you going to just drop a drone Hellfire missile on Jane Fonda?
You know, I go to a lot of biker bars, and there are some interesting pictures of Jane Fonda in some of those biker bars.
I bet.
Anyhow, we'll talk about Senator McCain's criticism later, but let's talk about Senator Paul's stance. I look, commend him for it. He brought to the attention of the American people a huge issue about constitutionality and individual liberty. So, ladies, what do you say? What do you say first, Tam?
Well, the one main thing about this was that he did it all without a teleprompter. So that in and of itself was thrilling. Look, I fall in between the middle here. I don't think it's an embarrassment, but I also don't think it necessarily took a lot of courage. The problem is that, look, it was wonderful. People finally saw somebody in the GOP standing up for something. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, Hagel and Brennan now control our military and the intelligence of this country, and Obamacare has been funded. So I look at end results, and I think that inspiration is very, very important. Don't get me wrong. Sure. But we've been so starving for that. As conservatives, I'm concerned, especially when I saw the reaction, that we'll accept even the smallest gesture as being good enough. We need to demand more. We need to look at end results, and we need to make sure, you know, that the GOP follows through.
It's sustained.
Well, it has to be. And again, I do think it was PR. Obviously, I think he's got other plans in mind. But I think that it's really about conservatives enjoying that, and you can enjoy it. But that is not a sign of what someone's going to do. He ended up voting for Hagel. I'm waiting to see more on Rand Paul, and conservatives should want more.
You know,
Sure.
I found it very inspirational because, you know, there seems to be a lot of apathy right now in the Republican Party, and he was able to bring so many people together.
ACLU,
Conservatives,
Code Pink,
libertarians, the Ron Paul folks, ACLU, Code Pink, we saw come together. That was very necessary at that moment. But I understand what you're saying, that I feel like anyone who comes along that says anything that's, you know, sounds like common sense, sounds like, you know, it sounds good, we instantly get on board like he needs to run for president, just like we saw with Benjamin Carson.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, someone says something, we're so hungry for leadership that anyone who comes along and says something,
that's the problem.
We want them to be president.
And that is, for the left and the right, people now realize that character matters. Mm-hmm. And then they're maybe
Do you think the left realizes that character matters?
I think they're realizing it because they know they might be in one of those cafes where a drone comes by. And by the way, you know, Holder finally did answer Rand Paul. He says, I sort of won. But his answer was that, no, it's not legal to send a drone onto somebody who's not engaging in combat. Well, now, how are we going to define combat?
There's a lot of gray area.
That's it. Now, that shouldn't be acceptable to Rand Paul, and yet he said he was happy with that answer. So there's a lot more to come, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm just glad to see someone talking about civil liberties. You don't hear that all that much in Washington, D.C., and you don't see people get so excited about it. I mean, he was trending on Twitter. He was trending nationwide in the country. You know, I think that's great to see that happening.
There is no doubt about it. He commanded the spotlight for that day, for those 13 hours, almost 13 hours. And he's commanded the spotlight for the last, 48, maybe 72-hour news cycle.
And he's been able to mainstream his father's ideas.
Yeah, and Obama's commanded the spotlight a lot, too.
Sure.
Leadership is more than that spotlight. And this is just my one concern, having come from the left, for every conservative listening, is be excited, be inspired, absolutely, but then continue to watch and continue to demand more.
Yeah, because in the military, in the Army, we had a term called Spotlight Rangers. You know, people that would show up, flash brilliance for about, 48 hours, and then they fade away. Well, two people who weren't fans of Rand's filibuster are Senators Lindsey Graham and John McCain. Senator McCain took to the Senate floor this week to voice his opinion on the matter. Let's hear what he says.
To somehow allege or infer that the President of the United States is going to kill somebody like Jane Fonda or someone who disagrees with the policies is a stretch of imagination which is, frankly, ridiculous. Ridiculous.
The problem for Senator McCain, the optics of him being at a swanky restaurant, chumming it up with President Obama, while this guy, Senator Paul, was standing up for constitutionality and civil liberties of the American people.
And like I said in the Up or Down segment, it doesn't matter if you disagree with him on drones. It's that a senator should have the right to ask an important question that he cares about, that his constituents care about, and get an answer, that he doesn't have to stand up for 13 hours to get it. So you should support him in his effort to get answers to questions.
And Tammy, the other thing is, once again, this shows this schism in the GOP.
Yeah.
I mean, it is very clear and evident. You have these young conservative senators, and you got McCain and Graham.
Yeah, it shows you that it's the old machine, literally and figuratively, versus not just young people, but serious people who are not from within that framework. And also, it's maybe not so, I don't know where McCain's been, but this administration sent thousands of weapons into Mexico, causing the lives of 300 people and at least one of our Border Patrol agents. So the idea that they might be okay with killing innocent people, and not to say nothing of Benghazi, is not so far afield. This is the problem, is when you combine this, the fact that we're even having this conversation is shocking. Yeah. That a filibuster occurs over something that the American people do come together on, and yet it still remains an issue when it comes to, look, no matter what you're doing, and you're an American, whether it's combat or anything else, you are an American. There is a thing about being on our soil, being an American citizen, that we're having a conversation about when that might not count. This is a sovereignty issue, and it's about the value of our citizenship and how this administration views it.
It's an individual sovereignty issue, which is something that is near and dear for a constitutional conservative. And you're absolutely right. When I look at some of the things that's being said, classifying, groups as extremist groups and what have you, I'm very nervous about the power that this executive branch is trying to assume and subsume.
And I think this was a victory for Tea Party and grassroots folks who are constantly battling the establishment, because this time the establishment looked out of touch.
They look totally out of touch.
On both sides. You have McCain as exemplifying what's going on with the Republicans and how they're out of touch. You've got Obama and his administration also wanting to move this and having gray areas about what's appropriate. And then you've got the American people who are hopefully saying enough is enough.
The Obama administration is having a bad month. I mean, they're looking totally in disarray. I mean, this issue, sequestration. So let's dovetail, continuing to talk about Senator Paul.
All right. Well, is it possible that the filibuster isn't all just about calling attention to our drone policy, that it might be about calling attention to 2016? Here's what Rand Paul told political reporters when he asked if he had presidential aspirations.
We're looking at it very seriously. I think our party needs something new, fresh, and different. We have to figure out how to appeal to the West Coast, New England, around the Great Lakes area. We need to figure out how to appeal to the blue-collar voters that were Democrats, that voted for Reagan, that I think are drifting back because they see us as a party of the wealthy.
So what do you all think of a Rand Paul 2016?
I don't know. I mean, Tammy brought up a great point. He stood there for 13 hours and gave a filibuster. And again, he should run for president. Ben Carson stands up there and
okay, you can't compare Ben Carson to Rand Paul.
No, I'm not comparing them, but what I'm saying is it's a reaction.
The reaction, but Rand Paul has
it's a reaction. It's just the same
experience.
It's just the same. But how do you know that? What's the most
He's a
important?
senator.
It doesn't make it. Chuck Hagel was a senator, and he's going to be
Harry
a
Reid's a
horrible.
senator.
But I'm saying that when you compare his experience to Ben
Barack
Carson's,
Obama was a senator.
There's a
Barack
difference.
Obama was a senator. Is he a good president?
No.
All right,
but I'm
then.
saying
So,
that,
I mean-
that it's not a fair comparison to compare Rand Paul and Ben Carson.
But what you're
Considering
not looking at is a resume comparison. I'm talking about a cult of personality thing. Barack Obama gave a speech in 2004 at the Democrat National Convention, and the next thing you know, he's a senator for 125 days, and then he's president. We got to get away from just focusing on what people do in a short period of time, in a now. And I really believe that this country is so desiring for leadership. I kind of understand what leadership is about. I want someone that can sit across the table from Mahmoud Ahmadinejad and make him pee on himself. That's what I want. That's what I want.
That's pretty simple. And
Well, you
direct.
know, I obviously one of my things that I care about is bringing the country together, and that's what he showed, that he can bring the country together.
He brought the country together on this single issue, but there are a multitude of things: national security, foreign policy, health care, economics, energy
let me
security.
remind, it's not hard to bring people together when we are together on the issue. I mean, this issue, it was the stroke of political genius is he chose an issue that he knew no one could legitimately disagree with. Now, that's important in politics and in dealing with primary issues and running for president and being able to do that. But what I've seen with Rand Paul is an inconsistency when it comes to his positions on Israel, when it comes to what he did with Hagel. He also had the mini filibuster on Hagel. And then he's one of 4 Republicans that vote for the man, saying that, well, Obama's got, this right to nominate whoever he wants, as though the Senate is a welcoming committee for these nominees, when they're not. And then, though, he doesn't apply that same theory to Brennan, whom he then voted against. So I don't know when it comes to philosophy what we're going to see, but this is why him being in the spotlight is going to be important, because we're going to find that out. And obviously he is running. I mean, he obviously is. And we'll find out what the American people want. And if we devolved into a nation of American Idol, where it's how much television time you have, or if there's going to be substance.
Yeah. We're already
Well,
American
if the
Idol.
Republicans are going to accept that, now we have to see if that's going to be the case or not.
All right. Well, he's in there. I know
He's
that.
in. I'm rooting for Rand Paul. I like
know
him.
you are.
Yay, go Rand.
All right, Tammy.
Hey.
Yes.
Are we 3 for 3 on Rand Paul's story? Or are you going to mix it up, do something a
we're
little different?
3 for 3 on individual liberty and the issue of character. Right,
Okay.
the issue of character. So I'm going a little bit international today because this is, of course, a global village. There is an award ceremony happening right now in Washington, D.C. for just 9 women. Originally, it was 10. The award is the International Women of Courage, and it's being handed off by Michelle Obama and John Kerry, our Secretary of State. Well, it was 10 until social media and the conservative press revealed to the State Department that one of their honorees, Samira Ibrahim, is a fan of September 11th and is clearly not a friend of the Jewish people. She had a series of tweets over the years where she, on the September 11th anniversary, was hoping that America would burn every year. When a number of Jewish people, Israelis, were killed in a bus bombing in Bulgaria,
Yeah, I remember that.
she tweeted that was a wonderful, wonderful day, and it was a sweet day. Now, these are things you could find out with a simple internet search. So here we have the State Department having this woman on a list. She was one of the women that the new Egyptian regime had forced a virginity test on. And in the meantime, of course, she is advocating and celebrating mass murder of Jews and the death to America. We paid for her to come here. She was going to get this award, and fortunately, that was stopped. Now, in the meantime, we've got, when you think about the kind of women we can honor, and especially for the next generation audience, Malala is how she's known. Young Pakistani girl shot in the head by the Taliban, is recovering in London, and even in her recovery now, she is now speaking up for women at a global level. And she is a teenager. This is, when you talk about role models for the next generation, this is who the world's teenagers are. This is what's possible when it comes to inspiration. Lastly, it's a sign that this administration, not just John Kerry, but the president and everyone involved, it concerns me. It's either that they just don't care, or they didn't care to look, or they were hoping we wouldn't notice. They're obviously out of
I
touch.
think
Michelle,
it has to do
you're
with
all over social
incompetence.
media.
I think
Yeah.
it has to do with incompetence. They just didn't look into it. I don't want to believe that they were intentionally trying to cover this up or try to brush it aside, because the tweets that she had were absolutely disgusting. And she had over 18,000 tweets. And when they found out about it, she said, oh, my Twitter account was hacked. Those 4 awful tweets I didn't write, which is crazy. If my Twitter account were hacked, I would immediately delete the tweets that the person wrote and perhaps put out a message of apology to my followers that someone wrote this awful stuff. But now she's changing her story. Now she's saying that she did write the tweets and she refuses to apologize to the Zionist lobby in America. This is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
Well, either way, it's incompetence or it's compliance. Both of them are bad. And when I watched the State Department spokeswoman stand up and say, well, this has been recently brought to our attention. Yeah, you got to be kidding me. Now, this, of course, comes after, the Secretary of State goes over and writes a check for $250 million to the Muslim Brotherhood. So I don't know what's going on in the State Department.
That's our problem. And that we paid for her to come here. She was here in the United States. We are now paying to send her back. I'd like for us to get some of that money back. I mean, I guess she wasn't affected by the sequester. So that's happening today. And
she's probably first class.
I would think probably so. So we've got it's not just a money issue. We will spend money in crazy ways when there's no character, when there's no value system that is established here. Maybe they didn't want to know. Sometimes when you don't want to know things, you don't look for them.
That's bad. That's not leadership. But I will tell you, Michelle and I have interviewed an incredible Egyptian Coptic Christian woman who had to flee that country because of her activism, Cynthia Farrahat. She lives in Washington, D.C.
That's right.
You wouldn't have to pay anything. And furthermore, President Obama, Secretary of State, take care of her plea for political asylum. All right. As I mentioned at the top of the show, today marks the 30th anniversary of Ronald Reagan's address to the National Association of Evangelicals in Orlando, or as is known more widely, the Evil Empire speech. And 30 years later, it's still just as timely. So in honor of President Reagan and his lifelong crusade for freedom, we all thought we'd revisit that historic moment. Take a look.
And we will never stop searching for a genuine peace. But we can assure none of these things America stands for through the so-called nuclear freeze solutions proposed by some. The truth is that a freeze now would be a very dangerous fraud, for that is merely the illusion of peace. The reality is that we must find peace through strength. I would agree to a freeze if only we could freeze the Soviets' global desires. It was C.S. Lewis who, in his unforgettable Screwtape letters, wrote, "The greatest evil is not done now in those sordid dens of crime that Dickens loved to paint. It is not even done in concentration camps and labor camps. In those we see its final result. But it is conceived and ordered, moved, seconded, carried, and minuted in clear, carpeted, warmed, and well-lighted offices by quiet men with white collars and cut fingernails and smooth-shaven cheeks who do not need to raise their voice." Well, because these quiet men do not raise their voices, because they sometimes speak in soothing tones of brotherhood and peace, because like other dictators before them, they're always making their final territorial demand, some would have us accept them at their word and accommodate ourselves to their aggressive impulses. But if history teaches anything, it teaches that simple-minded appeasement or wishful thinking about our adversaries is folly. It means the betrayal of our past, the squandering of our freedom. So I urge you to speak out against those who would place the United States in a position of military and moral inferiority. You know, I've always believed that old Screwtape reserved his best efforts for those of you in the church. So in your discussions of the nuclear freeze proposals, I urge you to beware the temptation of pride, the temptation of blithely declaring yourselves above it all, and label both sides equally at fault, to ignore the facts of history and the aggressive impulses of an evil empire, to simply call the arms race a giant misunderstanding, and thereby remove yourself from the struggle between right and wrong and good and evil.
I gotta tell you, you know, here we are talking about reducing our nuclear arsenal. Stupid thing. Here you when Reagan said, simple-minded appeasement or wishful thinking about our adversaries is folly. And then the last, part that he didn't believe in cultural relativism. Yeah. There's good and there's evil. There's bad and whatever. And, it's interesting because 2 years later I was a young lieutenant and I went through Checkpoint Charlie and I went to East Berlin.
Wow. And
I saw that. And it made a difference in my life.
Well, once in a lifetime experience, and clearly Reagan is the ultimate inspirer, but partly because we know in that speech and then what was to come that he acted on that, he made it happen. These were not just ideas or pretty words or things that you say from a script. This is he acted based on what he believed in. Yeah. And it was beautiful, and it made a difference.
It's genuine, and with this administration, we don't feel that. We know that he has these awesome Hollywood writers, and they're helping him craft these amazing speeches that will inspire, but he doesn't put his words into action.
And that's an example of leadership where we just saw there. That's what America is so starving for. So we'll see what happens in 2016. Time for Fast Facts. So, Michelle, kick it off.
All right. Well, my fast fact for today is 80, as in 80%. According to a new report, that's the percent of city public high school graduates who enrolled in a City University of New York Community College last year that had to relearn the basics of reading, writing, or math. And it was the highest percentage in years. So we're talking 80% of the kids who tried to apply did not know how to read, even though they graduated high school. How does that happen?
Well, I think it was in Detroit, where you had a superintendent of schools in Detroit that admitted that he was illiterate. That's how it happens. I mean, the inner city schools are failing, which is, again, a great place where we could make incredible strides, but no one's doing it.
I think the Rand Corporation, I think it was them, determined that it was 50% of our graduating college seniors are functionally illiterate, which means that they can't part one of the tests of that is understanding a 500-word editorial, something, more complex thinking. Those are college graduates, which means everyone is being promoted for no good reason.
I think it's sort of like a number system. Like everyone's just trying to push out as many students and get them degrees.
You have high school graduates. What does that mean?
Yeah, well,
what does it mean?
That's why the No Child Left Behind. I think it was a horrible thing. Taking a test is not teaching the kid. That's not developing critical thinking skills.
It's about the quality of the education, not the quantity of graduates. It's about how are they going to function in the real world once they graduate, and they can't. They don't know how to read.
That's right.
They don't. All right. My fast fact is 17,000. That's the number of recommendations that, if implemented by many of the inspector generals across all the agencies up in Washington, D.C., will save the American people $67 billion. It's being held up by the administration. 17,000, I just don't get it. But yet, the president is serious about cutting spending.
Well, we also learned that the White House has 3 calligraphers.
Yes, and they're getting paid $90,000
well,
or something.
Combined, it's about $255,000 a year. It is now. I thought, well, gosh, penmanship is coming back. If I knew, it would be wonderful. But yeah, so 3, and now you also have software that can do the calligraphy.
They can do it, yeah.
Look, the main one.
No. But then the president will say you're outsourcing jobs.
Well, I suppose so.
ATMs,
I suppose so.
Yeah.
And there's a dog walker. We've got to find out how much the the dog walker for
I'm sure
Bo the dog is
and the
making.
Benefits are probably incredible.
What it tells you is that this is all a game, that there's no seriousness at all, and I think that's becoming apparent to most of the American people.
I hope so.
Yeah.
All right. Tammy?
Well, gosh, now I'll tell you, I get to talk about your state, so this is going to be fun. There is, but I have to warn you, it is a horrible story. It truly impacts the next generation in a very direct, immediate way. My fast fact is 15,000. Now, that is the number of sharks that have decided to crash spring break, forcing drunken co-eds into hotel pools instead of the ocean, where God intended them to be in the ocean. Well, in fact, some of the photographs now, you see the sharks literally surfing in the waves.
Sure.
It is maybe more than 15,000. Wow. And of course, now the pools they're going to, I guess, I don't know if you can have as much fun at the pools in the hotels in Florida, but that's apparently where all the co-eds are going.
And I'm a master scuba diver. This is an every year thing because the sharks get into the Gulf Stream, warmer water.
That's right.
And they're waiting for the warmer water to continue north.
They're waiting for the girls in bikinis. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's different.
I don't really think this is going to affect people's spring break.
Well, I mean, you can't go out into the ocean.
But they don't. Most college students, when they go on spring break, the girls lay out and tan, and the guys are usually by the bar drinking. No one's out in the water.
People go to the beach.
The girls want their makeup and hair to look good and meet guys. They're not in the water.
Well, we're learning more about her, aren't we?
Here we are.
Oh, my goodness.
No, this is the college students don't go in the ocean when they go on spring break.
Yeah. Well, they're not this time.
Maybe you do. You go scuba diving. But come on, all those college students are just drinking by the pool anyways.
Well,
sad, but it's true. It's unfortunate.
It happens every year. And the other thing is that another reason why they hang out is the tarpon. The tarpon and they go into the feeding frenzy. So that you don't want to get into the water when sharks are in a feeding frenzy.
Well, as long as the sharks aren't drunk and they're having a good time, I guess we're fine then.
What was that thing on, was it Saturday Night Live? Land Shark?
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, Plumber. Candygram.
Land Shark.
Yeah, that's good.
Here we go. Here we go.
Oh, see, now, this is for the next generation. Let me recommend to everyone watching who is her age, go to YouTube and look up Land Shark Saturday Night Live, and you'll hear about Candygram. And it's a land shark that was trying to get into an apartment, and every time they'd ring the bell, and they announced it was like, Plumber.
And they would eat drunken spring breakers.
And then they would come in, and it was fabulous. Good humor. It's worth seeing again. Missy.
And we have yet found another thing that Michelle's like, what are y'all talking about?
What are you talking about?
Star Trek?
Real humor. When Saturday Night Live used to be good.
Land Shark.
Which has been a while.
All right. Well, that's it for today. Now that we have Michelle wondering, what's a land shark?
I know, I don't get it.
Let us know what you at home or at work thought of the issues we discussed today. Will we see a President Rand Paul? Are our young people learning? Let us know. You can post your thoughts in the comments section below or go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/NextGenTV. And on behalf of Michelle and Tammy, I'm Alan West. Have a great weekend, and thanks for watching.
Candygram.